welcoming you again on the third day of this workshop. For this, I request Dr. Viprudhar sir to please begin the session.
All right, so good morning. Oh, it was off. Okay, now good.
Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So, what happened to rest of the class? Okay, I think people still gonna join, but we are gonna get started because today we have to finish at least 3 topics. So last 2 days we primarily focused on like wastewater treatment. So today we are gonna actually move more towards like solid waste or organic waste management, and we are gonna also cover 2 different bioprocesses called anaerobic digestion and composting. Okay, so what is waste? So waste, garbage or trash, this is something like everyday items that we use, okay, and we throw them away. Okay, it can include a wide variety of components, okay, starting from food scraps, product packaging, grass clippings, furniture, clothing, cans, bottles, papers, appliances, different actually household hazardous materials like paint, batteries, okay, so even some electronic items. So solid waste, it's actually very heterogeneous collection of different types of waste, right? And solid waste in municipalities, solid waste can be generated from different sources, okay. So most of the time we focus on residential solid waste, okay, but solid waste can also be generated from school, hospitals and businesses, okay. And with growing population, okay, and urbanization and improving of our lifestyle, we are actually making more waste. And I was actually looking at some statistics, and due to rapid urbanization, economic growth, actually India is right now among one of the top 10 waste generating countries in the world. And another reason is actually the number of population, right? So this is actually another factor why India is within top 20. So as I said, solid waste can be generated from residential sources like household, apartment buildings, but at the same time solid waste can be generated from industrial sources like different types of manufacturing, fabrication industry, chemical plant, sometimes different commercial sources like store, hotels, shopping malls, restaurants, and sometimes institutional. It can be produced from school, hospital, university, government center, prison. So from when waste is generated from industrial, commercial and institutional waste, we kind of combine them together and we call them ICI waste, okay. So industrial, commercial and institutional. And solid waste can also be generated from construction and demolition, okay, projects, okay. So if you have any large construction project going on, that can actually significantly contribute to solid waste generation. And sometimes also municipal services can also produce solid waste. So for example, landscaping, water and wastewater treatment plants. So for example, we were learning wastewater treatment process, and one of the thing we learned that activated sludge process produce significant amount of sludge. So sludge is a kind of solid waste as well. It's considered as a solid waste. So so not necessarily municipal solid waste, or sometimes we use the term called MSW, so municipal solid waste. Not necessarily the majority part gonna come from residential sources. Sometimes as I mentioned, if you have any large construction project going on in your city, like demolition and construction waste can also be a significant factor, okay, or significant portion of your waste. And but if we look into residential, a major portion of residential solid waste is actually organic, and you can have different types of organic component in there, starting from food waste, paper, cardboard, plastic, okay, one of the most problematic, like waste that we have, textile, yard waste, okay, wood, like in countries like India you might have yard waste throughout the year, but in Canada, like we have very short summer, maybe 6 months summer and 6 months winter. So for during winter we don't do any gardening. So mainly yard waste is generated actually during summer, and that kind of can be a problem, because that means like that characteristics of waste during summer and winter months, it might be significantly different, right? So anyway, so inorganic waste you can have glass bottles, ferrous metals, okay, aluminum cans, okay, and then some other item we considered as ash, okay. So those items cannot be, or ash or inert material, those items cannot be actually recycled, or like cannot be transformed into some other value added product. So we kind of consider them as ash. But most of the time, like in most of the countries, majority of the organic waste is actually food waste and paper, okay. More than 50% in most cases is food waste and paper. So two major component, food waste and paper. And solid waste generation rate actually can be impacted by many factors, and some key factors are our lifestyle and activities and socio-economic condition, okay. For example, one thing you can consider, like when we were kind of raised mostly in our childhood in 90s, like early 90s, and at that time online shopping was not a practice, right? But nowadays I'm not sure what about India. So how is online shopping? It's very popular here, right? And you order, like you don't go to restaurant, you order food using app, right? So that means, and everything, when you buy some product online, everything comes with some packages, right? So there are a lot of actually packaging materials like paper, plastic, that actually kind of increase. So if you see last 15 years, like trend in online shopping increased, at the same time like packaging material, plastic, paper, those actually component in solid waste actually significantly increased as well. And at the same time, socio-economic condition, this is another important factor. So for example, if if your income is high, you are going to actually buy more stuff, right? That means more stuff means more consumption, we are going to produce more waste, okay. So socio-economic condition is considered as one of the major factor in solid waste generation. And this is actually a graph from per capita waste generation rate versus human development index. Human development index is kind of an indicator, okay, like this is actually tool developed by United Nations to measure like social and economic development condition of different countries. So higher actually human development index means your like social and economic condition is better, okay. So you can see here like we can see a very nice trend. In the x-axis we have human development index, which is the data was taken in 2007, and on the y-axis you have waste produced kilogram per capita per person. So per person how much waste that you generate, okay. So you can see here some countries in some cities in South Asia, and they selected 20 cities, okay, and some cities in South Asia like Delhi, India, Bengaluru, India, Nepal, Dhaka, Bangladesh, right? You can see here their human development index. So those are actually like India, Bangladesh, they are more like considered as developing countries, right? So their human development index is typically lower than if you considered with some developed countries like US, Australia, and some European countries, right? So you can see a very nice trend here. So with human development index, actually like waste generation rate per capita is increasing. So for example, some cities in South Asia, it's around 0.8 or 0.7, but in most of the cities in US and Australia, they are more around 1.5 or more than 1.5, right? So your social and economic condition, it's kind of, you know, very closely intertwined with how much waste that we generate, okay? And not necessarily, and just, you know, like right now and over the years, actually it's increased significantly. So for example, in Canada right now, average waste generation rate is around 2.5 kilogram per capita per day. So per person around, I think 2.5 kilogram waste that we generate, okay?
Same in US right now.
Yeah, same in also almost same in US as well.
Very old data, so
Yeah, but Canada, I think one of the thing is waste especially food waste generation rate is really high, and I don't see any number from you know, like some Middle Eastern countries, but I think, you know, it's gonna be high as well, especially food waste. Okay, this is kind of like, you know, I was in Dubai last summer, okay, for a conference for a week, and I could see how much food waste is generated there. Okay, so they don't have, if you go to restaurant, like everything is kind of big plate, okay, and you just eat a small portion and then rest is waste, which is kind of like, you know, very insane, like, you know, it's not acceptable. So not necessarily just the you know, not necessarily just the amount of waste, okay. At the same time, characteristics of waste can also be influenced by actually social and economic condition of a country. So for example, like, you know, here you can see some data from low income versus high income country. Well, one of the major similarities, you can see the both low and high income countries, organic waste, this is basically food waste, because plastic is also organic, right? Mainly food waste. In low income countries it's 53%, but in high income countries it's around 34%. But in both low and high income countries, organic waste represent the most significant portion of your waste. Major difference, but other stuff like metal, textile, glass, plastic, okay, you may not see a big difference, but big difference you are gonna see in paper, okay. So in low income countries you have 6% paper, but high income countries almost 25% paper, and it's kind of like, you know, there are many reasons, okay. So one thing I could say, like, you know, like more online shopping, okay. So even like, you know, nowadays I saw many people, even you need a toilet paper, you order that in Amazon, you don't go to the shop, which is yeah. So and everything, like, you know, they have good packaging. Like one day I actually ordered a USB drive, okay, very simple thing, and they had actually 3 different boxes, okay. So first it came with some, you know, boxes with the product, then another 2 boxes, some actually plastic wrapping, you know, like those you know, bubble wrap, okay, to make sure that it's not damaged during shipping. So you can see even a small thing, actually when you buy from online, it comes with a significant amount of waste, right? And why you should care about waste management? Because improper waste management create a lot of issues, okay. So for example, like, you know, if we, like, you know, or do open dumping for plastic bags, like, you know, one of the major challenging you know, major challenge in waste, solid waste management, it can actually pollute water bodies with different types of organic and inorganic compound and pollutants, okay. You can have flooding because it can actually block the you know, like water network, okay, block the drainage system. At the same time, sometimes we see we kind of feel that, okay, instead of open dumping, if you send those waste material into landfill, maybe it's good, but actually it's not, because even in landfill, some, or if you, especially if you send some organic material like food waste in landfill, over the time they are going to degrade by microbes, okay. And microbes gonna actually generate methane. Okay, methane, like anaerobic digestion process, and methane we know that it's more dangerous greenhouse gas compared to carbon dioxide, right? So so waste management is a very critical, okay, for make sure we can actually protect our environment and public health. And even for landfill, actually in landfill produce a wastewater stream called leachate, okay, and leachate is actually one of the most dangerous wastewater on, or most hazardous wastewater on earth. You can have many different types of material, okay, that actually cannot be easily treated in biological process, okay. And 93% of waste in low income countries, they are actually dumped, like without any treatment, and 2% in high income countries. But let me tell you, like in some remote communities, even in countries like US or Canada, they have they don't have proper waste collection system, okay, or proper waste management system, and their situation, I can tell you, like almost same as some low income countries. If you go to like Asia or Africa, okay, so the picture is almost the same. So even high income countries, not necessarily everyone getting the same type of waste management services, okay. So India generate our statistics from India. So India, I'm not sure like which year data, I forgot to put that, but more or less it's over 62 million tons of waste per year, okay, and only 43 million ton of waste is collected, but still actually majority of waste is actually discarded without any treatment in waste yard, and out of that 62 million, only 12 million, okay, so only very small portion is actually kind of processed appropriately, okay. So waste management is it's a big problem, okay, and it's a big problem right now, and with the growing population, that problem is actually becoming even more intense over the years. And waste management include prevention, recycling, processing, disposal program, okay. So we have to actually collect the waste, process it, okay, and then like if we can recover something, we should recover or recycle, and then rest we should dispose safely to make sure that we are not damaging the environment, okay. So selection and application of suitable methods. So what kind of method that we should use? Actually it's very critical, okay, to minimize the waste generation and maximize the reuse, recycling and material recovery. And sometimes actually like we generate waste, okay, and we don't know actually kind of some like small changes in our behavior can make a big difference in waste generation. So that's why, like, I'm not sure what's happening here, but many countries actually or many municipalities across North America, they spend a significant amount of budget to educate people, okay, so to educate people how we can actually minimize the waste, or how we can actually properly separate different types of waste to make sure that, okay, like it can be processed easily, okay. So and we should also focus on energy recovery and dispose all the remaining waste in the landfill. So if we cannot recover or recycle anything, the only option gonna be landfill. So we cannot completely get rid of landfill, but we can minimize, like what portion of waste is going to the landfill. And in waste management, this is something actually very popular these days, something called waste management hierarchy, okay. So you can see here, so our first objective in waste management should be reduce. So we should try to minimize the amount of waste that we generate, okay, every day. So if we can reuse something, we should try to reuse, okay. So use the materials repeatedly. So one of the thing, like with in modern days, like disposable things are very popular, right? If you have an event, instead of using some ceramic plate or something, you go with disposable, right? It's very easy to use. You just use and dump. You don't need to clean it, right? So this is something, so we should try to promote, okay. We should actually reusing stuff. So if we can reuse something, we should try to reuse them and reduce the amount of waste that we generate. Recycle. So if we can recycle something, especially paper, okay, cardboard, plastic, sometimes it's not very easy to recycle, okay, but still we should try to actually focus on turning waste into new product. Recovery. So sometimes some stuff cannot be recycled. So for example, food waste you cannot recycle, right, but food waste can be a valuable resource to actually produce different value added product like compost or biogas, right. So sometimes if we can recover any bioproduct, we should try to recover them. And at the same time, you know, like if there are any residuals that we cannot either recycle or reuse or recover any resources, it should go to the landfill. But our most preferred, okay, option should be reduce, reuse and recycle. So we call it actually 3R approach. So this is something actually widely used these days, like, you know, something called 3R, zero waste, many other terms actually used in waste management industry to promote this 3R. So and that 3R, reduce, reuse and recycle, can lead us to a significant cost saving in our waste management, okay. And again, the disposal would be the least preferred, but obviously we cannot completely get rid of the landfill. So key elements in municipal solid waste management system is collection, transfer and transport. So collecting waste, okay, and then you actually take them to the facilities properly, okay. That's actually a big challenge, because sometimes actually collection, especially some low income countries, there is no appropriate collection system, okay. So there is no appropriate collection system which lead to actually open dumping, okay. So you cannot collect everything, every waste that is actually generated. So collection, transfer and transport to the waste management facility, this is a key element. And the second key element is processing. So if there are some recyclable material, you should try to recycle them, okay. If there is any organics that we cannot recycle, we should try to see if we can use some bioprocess and convert them into some value added product. And then finally we should separate the any kind of residual or inorganic items or any items that we cannot reuse or recycle. We should actually dispose them in landfill. So collection system may vary in different countries, okay. Residential collection system is usually in you know, most of the developed countries, they are actually provided by municipalities, sometimes by private companies, but in most cases municipality provide, like, you know, waste and wastewater services, okay. You have to either pay the fee or sometimes it can be included in your property tax. But in less developed countries or low income countries, they do not have formal waste collection system, okay. So how is the collection system here in Allahabad? Is there any like service that is provided by the municipality? Okay. So how everything is mixed together, like, you know, food, no segregation. So okay, yeah. So maybe you never know, maybe after 10 or 15 years later, okay, you have to segregate your waste, okay, and then it's going to be collected separately, because now countries are actually becoming more concerned about the impact of. Okay. So after collecting, it's segregated in the facility, okay. But so, and how about the fees? You pay fees or it's actually included in the property tax? But they are not getting money from so that money has to come from somewhere, huh?
Property tax or depends on the state government grants.
Okay. So
India mostly municipalities are not profit making. Few municipalities are profit making, such as Ahmedabad, Surat. Ahmedabad is having a very good model. They are more profitable.
Okay.
Because they actually calculate the property tax according
Okay, okay.
This kind of calculation.
Okay, okay. So like in Canada, in our city, we pay about $600 per year for just for collection. So more or less you can see per person is producing in Canada close to 1 ton of solid waste per year, right? So if you have 3 person at home, you are actually paying close to $200, okay, $200 per person, so or per ton of waste. But typically tipping fee for solid waste is around from $100 to $120. So that means $100 or $120 it's for collection, and then $100 or $120 is for processing the waste. Okay. And typically 2 types of collection truck, okay, you can have in for solid waste collection. So one is called haul collection system. So haul collection system is actually container used for storage. So container used for storage of waste or collection of waste is actually taken to the disposal site. Okay. So for example, this kind of collection system is very popular for collecting waste from high waste generation areas. So for example, like if you have a big construction project going on, right? So typically there are big those waste container where everything is dumped, and then the whole container is actually taken to the facility, okay, either landfill site or solid waste management facility. But for household waste collection, another system is popular, which is called stationary waste collection system, okay, especially for single family household. So stationary waste collection system, how it works? So container used for storage. So there every house they have kind of small container, and on the garbage day, we call it garbage day. For some community it could be Friday, some community it could be Monday. Okay, so you take your container to the curb, and then it's actually collected by the truck. Okay, so some cities they have like a truck with mechanical arm, so they don't have any worker, just the driver. So they are actually collecting the waste because municipality provided those waste container. They are same size, right? So it's easy to collect for them. So container used for storage remain at the point of generation, okay, and the collection truck it collect from one location to another location until the truck is full with waste, and when truck is full, they take all the garbage to the disposal site or processing facility. So even 15 or 20 years ago, okay, waste management facility most of the time actually refer to landfill site. Okay, even like the interesting thing is, if you see the course syllabus for solid waste management, okay, back in early 2000, you are gonna see not necessarily here in US or Canadian universities, most of the time solid waste management course was mostly focusing on landfill design. Okay, so solid waste means landfill design, nothing else. But nowadays actually it significantly changed, okay, because now industry trend is quite different. So they want to get rid of landfill. Okay, even our province of Alberta, they had a mandate like they want to make landfill free Alberta. So landfill free doesn't mean that okay, we completely get rid of landfill, but we want to divert at least 90% so waste from landfill. Okay, so very small portion we want to send to landfill site. And actually in Canada, the number of landfill sites are very high compared to some European countries. Okay, and what was the reason? Because Canada is a very big country. Okay, we are the actually second largest country in the world, but if you see the population, okay, I'm not sure, like we have 41 million people. Maybe I don't know, maybe in I know in Dhaka there are more than 20 million people, right? So how about Delhi? What is the population in Delhi?
Should be more than 10 million at least.
It should be more than, yeah. So that's why we had actually lot of open space. So it was actually, they did not actually, so we are not limited by footprint. So landfill was the cheapest option to build. But if you go to European countries, they actually are very aggressive in solid waste management. They adopted many actually advanced technologies because they were limited by footprint, right? They don't have actually a lot of space.
But here I have a question. Actually, I have seen this argument many times that they don't have landfills. But I have also read somewhere that they send their waste, which could be landfill, to some underdeveloping countries or developing countries.
Yes, there were some actually report that especially some stuff, if they cannot incinerate, okay. So in Europe, incineration was like very popular practice. So you basically burn everything, you get 90% of volume, 5% of volume reduction, and only small portion of inert material like ash is left. But some stuff like let's say electronic waste, you cannot do anything. So they were mainly shipped to some African countries, okay, and actually their e-waste was actually became a big problem for them, okay. So yes, you are correct that some of the items were actually shipped to other countries, and actually I am going to get into that. Actually, like industry now facing big challenges these days. So anyway, let's go back to our current topic. So previously, waste management facility used to be only landfill, but modern waste management facility, we have many different unit operation, okay, or many different facilities. So one is called material recovery facility or MRF. So what is MRF? MRF is basically the facility where different recyclable items are sorted, okay. So for example, paper, plastic, cardboard, okay. So everything is sorted, okay, and then baled, and then it's actually shipped to the manufacturing industry for turning into new products, okay. Composting facility is basically for processing food and yard waste, okay, or any kind of organic waste that is biodegradable. Anaerobic digestion facility, but composting facility is more popular because composting facility is composting process is cheaper compared to anaerobic digestion, okay. But still anaerobic digestion is I believe quite popular in India. I was actually looking into some statistics, and in India there are close to 4 million anaerobic digester, okay, and but out of that 4 million, actually 3 million are household. So that means many villages, okay, they have small those biogas digester, that is actually, so they use their household organic waste and produce biogas to actually for cooking, right. Some thermal processing facility like incineration is actually very popular in Europe because they were actually kind of landlocked, right. They did not have enough land space to build landfill site. So thermal processing is actually very popular, and some site actually also include, not some site, actually most of the site also include landfill. So for example, in our the city where I live, we have material recovery facility, composting facility, anaerobic digestion facility. We had thermal processing facility, but that was not incineration, that was gasification. But unfortunately that facility was closed last year, okay, because gasification is kind of like little bit advanced process compared to incineration. So they were actually I'm not sure what was the challenges exactly, but that facility was closed. But we used to have thermal processing facility, and at the same time we also had a landfill in the province where I actually so here you call state, okay. In our in Canada we call provinces, okay. So in our province we have about 300 landfill site, okay, and every year provincial government spend about $150 million to manage them, okay. So material recovery facility, okay, basically it's for recovery of recyclable items. In some here, as you mentioned, that it's not segregated, so everything is mixed together, okay, and then it's actually taken to the facility and separated. But in some high income countries or developed countries, they are actually collected separately. So you have to put your garbage in one bag, okay, if any recyclable items in a separate bag, like in blue bag or blue bin, and food waste is actually collected separately, food or yard waste. Okay. So, there are 3 different streams that is actually coming from each household. So, what we have in recyclable or items, so we can have paper, cardboard, plastic, glass, metals and aluminum. And aluminum, like aluminum cans, like it could be from beer, soft drinks, and this is kind of like it's highly recommended that we recycle this kind of items. So, for example, metal mining actually kind of like has a very large carbon footprint, right? So, if we can actually recycle some of the metals, actually it's kind of based on life cycle assessment, it was showing that it can significantly reduce the emission. Okay. And material recovery facility include both manual and mechanical separation. Okay. Why manual separation? Although like these days yesterday we talked about machine learning, AI, right, artificial intelligence, but still like some stuff can be done by human more effectively, because machine may not identify some of the items, right. So, if you have some most of the time if you go to any facility, okay, regardless of how advanced it is, okay, most of the time the first step is manual sorting or manual separation of items, because like worker, they can easily identify what kind of material, if it go to the downstream unit processes, then what kind of item can create problem. So, for example, sometimes let us say in your kitchen blender it's suddenly stopped working, but you think, okay, what, there it can be recycled, and you put it in the blue bin. Okay, you put it with good intention, but if it actually go to the facility and if it actually go to some unit process, actually it can damage the facility or damage the equipment. So, that means actually they have to shut down and actually repair, right. So, it can be actually big economic challenge for the facility. So, that is why still manual sorting, it is a actually very critical process in material recovery facility. And at the same time you can have different types of mechanical processes like disc screen, glass breaker, cyclone, magnet, eddy current and so on. Okay. And those unit separate the item based on the physical characteristics of the items. Okay. For example, based on size, density, magnetic properties. So, if you have large items and small items, and if you use a screen, you can easily separate large items from small items, right. If you have some ferrous iron, you can easily use magnet, right, and separate them from the stream. If you have some non-ferrous item like aluminum can, you can use something called eddy current. If you have plastic and glass bottle, plastic are lighter material, right, and glass bottles, they are heavy, you can actually use something called air classifier. Okay. So, you can like provide high velocity of air, okay, and that can actually separate heavy items from lighter items. There is something called optical sorter. Optical sorter is kind of advanced unit or equipment that can actually sort plastic based on their type and color. Okay, because plastic is the most problematic thing, because there could be many different types of plastic, right. So, it could be PET, it could be HDPE, right. So, PET is much more transparent. Okay. For example, our water bottle, it's PET, but some stuff could be like non-transparent or heavy plastic like HDPE. So, it's kind of like very difficult to actually sort them based on their type and color and everything, right. And another challenge actually, like I was telling, so most of the recyclable item that is actually generated in developed countries, previously they were shipped to China. 90%, okay, was shipped to China before until 2018. Okay. And why? Because most of the manufacturing industries, they were in China, India. And why? Labor cost, low labor cost. You are going to see most of the thing, like even Apple iPhone is actually like it's actually produced in China, right. So, the same thing for recyclable material. More than 90% of the recyclable material that was actually produced in developed countries, they were actually shipped to China. But now China over last 15 or 20 years, their economy was booming. Okay, so now they have economic growth, they have population, and they are actually generating significant amount of waste. So they don't need waste from other countries, right? But now countries like Canada, US, they did not build manufacturing industry that much, right? Because like the cost is high, so shipping was cheaper for them, because they could just generate revenue from by selling those items to some manufacturing industries in China. But now in 2016 or 17, China was actually informing most of the municipalities in North America that, okay, you know what, from January 1st 2018, okay, we are not going to take your waste if it's contaminated. So if you are actually shipping us paper, and if you have some plastic in there, we are going to actually ship you back. Okay, we cannot take this kind of item. So your item must be 99.9% pure. Okay, so without any contamination. But like most of the municipalities, they thought, okay, you know what, like they are just scaring us, more like tariff these days. So they thought, okay, you know what, it's not going to happen, and we can still do that. But now actually China 2018 January 1st, they were very strict. They said, okay, they shipped them back. And many municipalities in North America, they actually stored their belt recyclable item for a couple of months. They could not ship it anywhere, and they were actually forced to ship them. They were actually forced to actually send those material to landfill. So you actually separate the item, you put them in blue bag, you thought it's going to be recycled, but actually it was going to the landfill. Okay, for I think it especially 2018 and 19 was very challenging for most of the municipalities. But meanwhile, what happened, some other countries like in Africa, okay, countries in Asia like Thailand, India, they were actually building new manufacturing industries. They wanted to actually take advantage of this market, because now price of those items decrease because demand is less, right? So they were actually so nowadays most of the recyclable material from Canada is I think coming to Thailand, India, and some other Asian countries. Okay, so yeah, so yes, we know that some item can be recycled, but still it's not that easy. Okay, so composting is mainly used for biodegradable organic waste into carbon dioxide, water, and heat is generated in the process. And so this is more like aerobic process. Okay, so aerobic process, we learned that actually microbes, they use oxygen, right, and produce carbon dioxide and water. So composting process is similar to that, and at the end of the process we produce a stabilized solid which is called compost. And compost, so in the process, during the biodegradation process, actually carbon is degraded, right, but nutrient and phosphorus like nitrogen and phosphorus, they are still there at the end of the process. And we know that nitrogen and phosphorus, they are very important for plant growth, right? They are like a fertilizer. So compost was actually compost is actually very popular slow release fertilizer. Okay, another bioprocess that we can use for organic and biodegradable waste is anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion is done by anaerobic microbes, so they do not need any oxygen. Okay, and in absence of oxygen, they degrade the organic compound and produce carbon dioxide and methane gas. And we know that methane, and typically biogas contain 40 to 70% methane and 30 to 50% carbon dioxide. And there is lot of application of anaerobic digestion. Anaerobic digestion can treat, digestion process can treat a wide variety of organic waste, not necessarily just or food waste or yard waste. We can use manure, we can use wastewater sludge, different types of food waste, and biogas can be actually used to generate heat and electricity, which is kind of very popular. Okay, we call it CHP process, combined heat and power generation unit. but nowadays people are trying to get more value added product from biogas. So one of the thing is upgrading biogas to renewable natural gas, or we call it RNG. Okay, so renewable natural gas, if you can remove the carbon dioxide and other impurities, it's going to be close to 95 to 97% methane, so which is close to natural gas. So you can actually directly inject that in the grid. Methane can also be actually used to produce bioplastic. Okay, but the yield is quite low. Okay, yield is quite low, and lot of other byproduct can be actually produced from anaerobic digestion process these days. But heat and electricity and RNG, they are kind of most common product, okay, or most common application, because for other application like bioplastic, yield is low, so it's not economically still feasible yet. Thermal processing, there could be three types of thermal processing. Okay, incineration is the most common one. Okay, incineration process can give us heat, and we can also produce actually electricity from incineration. There are some other advanced thermal processing technologies available, like pyrolysis and gasification. So pyrolysis process give you oil, bio oil, okay, or sometimes we call it pyrolysis oil, which is very close to crude oil, petroleum crude oil. Okay, but maybe energy content gonna be little lower compared to, or energy content can be lower than petroleum crude, and there are some upgrading challenges, but still you can produce bio oil using pyrolysis process. And the process also use something solid product, bioproduct called biochar. Okay, possibly you heard about biochar. I think in the first day we talked a little bit about biochar. There are many different environmental application of biochar. You can use it for water treatment, right? And some people also use that biochar for soil amendment as well. Gasification process use actually produce something called syngas. Okay, synthetic gas is it's a mix of carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Okay, so carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and syngas can be further converted into some biofuel like ethanol or methanol. Okay, and what is the application of ethanol or methanol? It can be blended with your petroleum oil. Okay, it can be like in Canada we have a mandate that actually most of the provinces, they want at least 5 to 10% of our regular gasoline is actually mixed with like 5 to 10% ethanol or methanol. Okay, so incineration, pyrolysis, gasification process, they are all of them, they are actually operated at high temperature. Okay, but the major difference between incineration, pyrolysis and gasification is the amount of oxygen that you provide in the process. So incineration process, it's actually it's a combustion process. Okay, so you combust everything, so that means the you need to provide oxygen for combustion. Okay, so excess amount of air is actually provided in the process. And pyrolysis process, this is actually done without any oxygen. Okay, so and gasification process, you provide partial amount of oxygen. So that's why when you don't have enough oxygen, carbon is kind of combined with oxygen, but not enough oxygen for complete combustion. So instead of carbon dioxide, you end up with carbon monoxide. Okay, and hydrogen gas.
So among these three processes, which one do you feel is having less environmental impact?
It's hard to tell. Okay, I think pyrolysis and gasification, they are still in pilot scale. Okay, pilot scale. Incineration is kind of widely implemented. Okay, it's kind of like already established.
A lot of air pollutants like oxygens.
Yeah, dioxin and others, but you can actually, we know how to control them. Yes, it's kind of like you have to have some facilities to deal with that, but pyrolysis and gasification, they are still, I think, lab or pilot scale. Actually, first gasification facility was in our city, Edmonton. So first demonstration was in Edmonton, but as I said, the facility was closed last year. So that means still there are some challenges. If the facility was running properly, there was no point that they closed it, right? So pyrolysis and gasification, still it's not a market proof right now. Okay, but I'm not sure, like maybe I'm pretty sure if you
I have seen many plants based on
pyrolysis
pyrolysis. They use plastics.
plastic, okay, a large scale or like large scale. So yeah, pyrolysis, because biochar production is kind of very popular these days. Yeah, very popular these days. So pyrolysis, it's not very challenging, but gasification, the problem is you are producing syngas and you have to further convert syngas to some product, right? So you need actually two facilities, not just gasification. You need like some sort of catalytic conversion process that can actually convert syngas to some biofuel. But I'm pretty sure if you search online, you are going to see some systematic studies on life cycle assessment of different processes. Okay. So landfilling is the last option. Okay, landfilling is the last option. If you cannot actually reuse anything or recycle anything, or cannot recover any value-added resources from our waste, we have to send them to landfill. And landfill actually engineered facility for safe disposal of waste. So it's not just dig and dump your waste. Okay, you have to make sure that they are safely disposed. Okay, and it's not actually affecting your, it's not contaminating your groundwater, or not actually creating any air pollution or anything. Okay. One of the major challenge with the landfill is landfill produce actually significant amount of leachate. Okay, so and leachate, as I was telling, it's one of the most hazardous wastewater on earth. Okay, so it's not actually possible to treat leachate using just simple, it's not like municipal wastewater. You cannot just use, treat it without with just a simple biological process. Okay, you need some advanced physicochemical process to deal with landfill leachate. Okay, so and even let's say some landfill sites are closed. So let's say you have a landfill site, it's completely full, you are not dumping waste, but maybe 50 or 60 years you have to still deal with the leachate. Okay, and over time even leachate production gonna be higher. It's even going to be more concentrated with different types of pollutants, right? So it become even more challenge, like like over time. So that was kind of like an overview of solid waste management industry, currently what's going on and what kind of processes that we have to deal with our waste. But for rest of today's lecture, going to be focusing on two processes, because this course is on environmental bioprocesses, right? So we are going to cover two topics, composting and anaerobic digestion process. So why don't we take 5 minutes break, okay, and then we will continue with our next topic, composting. Okay, thank you.